it wasn't the sound of the front door closing for the last time that announced the end of my marriage. It wasn't a tearful confession, or a heated argument, or even a neatly typed divorce petition. It was a mundane Tuesday afternoon, an email notification, and the cold, digital confirmation of a failed mortgage payment. That was the moment my perfect suburban dream didn't just crack, it shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Up until that Tuesday, my life had been, for all intents and purposes, a postcard. Mark and I had built a home, not just a house, in a tree-lined cul-de-sac that smelled of freshly cut grass in the summer and wood smoke in the winter. Our 3-bedroom, 2-bath haven, with its meticulously kept rose garden and a comfortable porch swing, was the physical manifestation of 10 years of shared dreams, diligent saving, and what I believed was unwavering love. We were the couple everyone admired, stable, loving, supportive, and, by all outward appearances, utterly secure. Mark, with his kind eyes and an easy laugh, was everything I thought I wanted. He was an accountant, meticulous and responsible, the kind of man you trusted implicitly with your future. I worked as a graphic designer, pouring my creativity into branding and marketing campaigns. We'd met in college, navigated our 20s hand in hand, and married in a small ceremony overlooking the ocean. Our trajectory felt pre-written: successful careers, a beautiful home, eventual children, and a comfortable retirement funded by years of careful planning. Our joint bank account, a fortress of growing numbers, was the tangible symbol of that future. It held our combined salaries, our investments, our emergency fund, and the increasingly significant nest egg we'd earmarked for our golden years. We talked about renovations, travel, maybe even an early retirement to pursue our hobbies. It wasn't just money, it was freedom, security, peace of mind. Looking back, the signs were there, faint whispers at first, easily dismissed by a woman too comfortable in her perceived happiness. Mark had started working longer hours, or so he said. He'd often come home late, tired and distant, sometimes even a little agitated. Big project, he'd mumble, rubbing his temples, and I, ever the understanding wife, would just nod and make sure his dinner was warm. Our evenings, once filled with shared stories and comfortable silences, became quieter. He spent more time on his phone, always claiming it was work-related, excusing himself to take calls in another room. His easy laugh became less frequent, replaced by a strained smile. He'd grown protective of his phone, too, a new habit I attributed to client confidentiality. If I ever happened to glance at his screen, he'd quickly turn it away. There were other things. Little shifts in his routine, small deviations from the familiar rhythm of our shared life. He stopped asking me about my day with the same genuine interest. Our weekly date nights became monthly, then sporadic. When I brought it up, he'd apologize profusely, blame stress, promise to do better. And for a while, he would, pulling me into a hug that felt a little less spontaneous than before, making plans that felt a little less enthusiastic. I chalked it up to the grind of adulthood, the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. Marriage wasn't always fireworks, I reasoned, sometimes it was quiet companionship, a comfortable warmth. I told myself we were simply settling into a deeper, more mature love. I was wrong. I was so profoundly, spectacularly wrong. That Tuesday morning had been like any other. The sun streamed through our bedroom window, waking me before my alarm. Mark was already up, his side of the bed cool. He usually left early for his office in the city. I'd kissed him goodbye, a quick peck on the cheek as he'd rushed out the door with his briefcase, his customary "love you, hon," feeling a little perfunctory that day. I'd spent the day hunched over my Wacom tablet, immersed in a new logo design, the rhythmic click of my mouse a comforting backdrop to the quiet hum of our home. Around 3 o'clock, a notification popped up on my phone screen. An email. From our mortgage lender. I barely registered it at first, assuming it was a marketing email or a statement reminder. But then my eyes caught the subject line, urgent, mortgage payment failure notification. My heart did a strange, uncomfortable lurch. Payment failure? That was impossible. Our mortgage payment was automatically deducted on the first of every month, like clockwork. We had a substantial buffer in our checking account, always, precisely to avoid such things. Mark, the accountant, was fastidious about our finances. This had to be a mistake. A glitch in the system. I opened the email. The message was succinct, stark. Dear valued customer, we regret to inform you that your automatic mortgage payment of $2,850, scheduled for date, has failed due to insufficient funds. Please rectify this situation immediately to avoid late fees and potential adverse reporting to credit bureaus. Insufficient funds. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. Insufficient funds? That was utterly, completely, ridiculously wrong. We had tens of thousands in that account. Hundreds of thousands across all our accounts. I blinked, reread it, a tight knot forming in my stomach. This wasn't just a mistake, it felt personal. A cold dread began to creep up my spine. My first thought was Mark. He'd know. He'd explain. He always handled the banking details, while I trusted him completely. I fumbled for my cell phone, my fingers suddenly clumsy. I dialed his office number, hoping for his familiar, reassuring voice. It rang once, twice, then clicked over to voicemail. You've reached the desk of Mark Thompson. I'm currently unavailable. Please leave a message. My voice, when I spoke, sounded thin and reedy, even to my own ears. Hey, hon, I just got a weird email from the mortgage company. Said the payment failed? I'm sure it's nothing, but can you call me when you get a sec? Love you. I tried to sound nonchalant, but the tremor in my voice betrayed me. I tried his cell phone next. Straight to voicemail. That was unusual. Mark always had his phone on him, always answered. I sent him a text, call me about the mortgage email, please. A little worried, no response. The knot in my stomach tightened, evolving into a cold, hard stone. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. Had he forgotten to transfer funds from savings to checking? Unlikely, but possible. Had there been a huge, unexpected expense I wasn't aware of? Also unlikely, given his meticulous nature. But the phrase insufficient funds kept echoing in my head, loud and insistent. A flicker of genuine panic ignited. I needed to see for myself. I walked over to my home office, my steps feeling heavy, as if I were wading through water. I sat down at my desk, the glow of the monitor reflecting my increasingly anxious face. My hands trembled slightly as I typed in the URL for our bank's online portal. I entered my username, then the password, my breath catching in my throat. Every fiber of my being screamed that this was a mistake, a phantom problem that would vanish with a click. The page loaded. Our primary joint checking account was displayed prominently. I stared at the balance. My vision blurred. $37.14. $37.14. My brain refused to process it. It was like looking at a foreign language. That couldn't be right. I refreshed the page. Still $37.14. My hands flew to my mouth, stifling a gasp. No. This was a nightmare. This had to be a cruel, elaborate prank. But it wasn't April Fool's. I clicked on the savings tab, my heart hammering against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. This was where the real money was, our emergency fund, our down payment for that cabin we dreamed of owning one day. I held my breath, the screen feeling like an executioner's block. Balance, $0. 0. My breath hitched. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. My fingers, now numb, navigated to our investment accounts. Retirement funds. Brokerage accounts. Every single one, linked through the same portal. I clicked through them, each click a fresh stab of disbelief, a new layer of horror. $0. $0. $0. Every penny. Every single dollar we had painstakingly saved, invested, and planned our future around, was gone. Utterly, irrevocably gone. Our substantial savings, our retirement funds, every joint accumulation over a decade, vanished. The numbers staring back at me were stark, unforgiving zeros. My body began to shake uncontrollably. A high-pitched keening sound escaped my throat, a sound I didn't recognize as my own. It wasn't just the money. It was the absolute, crushing realization that Mark hadn't just made a mistake, hadn't just been careless. He had systematically, meticulously, emptied every single account. This wasn't a glitch, it was a deliberate act. The panic that had started as a knot in my stomach now exploded into a full-blown assault on my senses. My head swam. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the desk, trying to steady myself, but the world was spinning. I felt like I was suffocating, the air thick and unbreathable. He was gone. My husband, the man I loved, the man I trusted with my life and my future, had not just left me, he had vanished with our entire financial existence. He hadn't just walked out the door, he had stolen every shred of our shared security, leaving me with nothing but a failed mortgage payment and the chilling, desolate emptiness of a life savings account. The silence of the house pressed in on me, heavy and accusing. It wasn't the comfortable silence I had known that morning. It was a mocking, hollow silence, echoing the gaping void where our future used to be. Mark hadn't just broken my heart, he had dismantled my entire world, brick by meticulously stolen brick, and left me standing in the ruins, utterly alone and utterly bankrupt. The worst part, the most insidious, soul-crushing part, was that he had done it in secret. While I was making dinner, while I was kissing him goodbye, while I was dreaming of our future, he was orchestrating my financial ruin. And that, I would soon learn, was just the beginning. And that, I would soon learn, was just the beginning. The world had narrowed to the cold blue glow of my laptop screen, the zeros mocking me with their stark finality. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. No. This couldn't be real. This had to be a mistake, a glitch, a sick joke. I rebooted the computer, cleared my browser cache, tried logging in again, my hands trembling so violently I could barely type. The result was the same. Zero. Everywhere. Denial, a fragile, desperate thing, was my first instinct. Mark. He'd know. He'd explain. He'd fix it. I grabbed my phone, fingers fumbling over the keypad, calling him again. Straight to voicemail. The subscriber you are trying to reach is unavailable. Please leave a message. His recorded voice, so familiar, so soothing, now felt like a cruel taunt. I called again. And again. 20 times, maybe more. Each ring an echo of my growing panic, each voicemail a deeper plunge into the abyss. Then I tried his work number. The main line. Mark Henderson, please. One moment. The hold music was upbeat, saccharine, a stark contrast to the acid churning in my stomach. A different voice, crisper, more professional, came on the line. Mark Henderson is currently on indefinite leave. May I direct your call elsewhere? Indefinite leave? My blood ran cold. He hadn't said a word. Mark was meticulous about his work. He never took spontaneous time off, certainly not indefinite leave. A new, far more terrifying narrative began to form in the shadowy corners of my mind. Indefinite leave? I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. This is his wife. Is everything all right? Has anyone heard from him? There was a brief, uncomfortable pause. I'm afraid I can't disclose any further information, ma'am. Human Resources handles all personnel matters. Human Resources. The corporate equivalent of a stone wall. My stomach clenched tighter. This wasn't just a simple disappearance. This was orchestrated. My next calls were to his family. His sister, Sarah, first. She was usually so chatty, so open. "Oh, hey, Mark's just taking a little break, you know? He's been stressed." Her voice was too bright, too casual, laced with an underlying tremor I instantly recognized as evasion. "Stressed about what, Sarah? And why didn't he tell me?" "He's not answering my calls. Our mortgage payment just failed." Another pause, longer this time. "Oh, wow, that's not like him. Look, I really don't know much, my name. He just said he needed some space." Space. From me? From our life? The sickening truth began to solidify. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake. He was gone. And he hadn't just left. He had vanished. I tried his parents, hoping for a more honest answer, a shred of truth. His mom, usually so doting, was distant, her voice tight with what sounded like suppressed anger or fear. "We haven't heard much, dear. He said he needed to clear his head. He'll call when he's ready." No offer of help, no concern for me, no questions about why I was calling. Just a wall of vague excuses, a clear, unspoken message, they knew something, and they weren't telling me. My own parents lived states away, and I couldn't bring myself to tell them yet, not until I understood what the hell was happening. Shame, hot and prickly, bloomed in my chest. I sat there, the phone heavy in my hand, the silence of the house once again pressing in. My world, which had been perfectly ordered that morning, was now unraveling at breakneck speed. My husband was gone. Our money was gone. And his own family was covering for him. I felt a scream building in my throat, but it lodged there, a painful, silent knot. Then, a name surfaced in the chaos of my thoughts. Laura. My best friend since college. She was fierce, loyal, and practical. She would know what to do. I called her, my voice raw, breaking on every word as I tried to explain, to articulate the nightmare I was living. "He's gone, Laura. Mark is gone. And the money, all of it. Our savings, our retirement. It's all gone. Every single penny." There was silence on her end for a long moment, a stunned gasp. "What? My name, what are you talking about? Are you sure? That's insane. I'm staring at the bank statement, Laura. Zero. Across the board. I can't reach him. His work says indefinite leave. His family is lying to me." My voice cracked, tears finally overflowing, streaming down my face. "I don't know what to do." Okay. Okay, breathe, my name. I'm coming over. Don't touch anything. Don't do anything. Just stay right there. I'm on my way." Her voice, usually so confident, had a sharp edge of anger and concern that cut through my haze of despair. I clung to that anger, a lifeline in the swirling chaos. Laura arrived an hour later, her face grim. She took one look at me, my tear-streaked face, my shaking hands, the laptop screen displaying the devastating zeros, and immediately pulled me into a tight hug. It was the first human contact I'd had since Mark vanished, and I clung to her, sobbing into her shoulder, the terror finally finding a release. "He's not just gone, is he?" I whispered, pulling back, her eyes meeting mine. "He stole it. He stole everything." "We're going to find out," she said, her jaw set. "And if he did, he's going to pay. Every last cent." We started digging. Laura, with her tech-savvy mind, took the lead. She scoured our shared digital footprint, looking for any anomaly, any strange purchase, any unusual login. I handed her Mark's old laptop, our shared tablet, anything that might hold a clue. While she worked, I felt a morbid curiosity, a desperate need to understand, even as a part of me recoiled from the inevitable pain. It was Laura who found the first crack in Mark's meticulously constructed facade. She was looking through our shared photo cloud, a trove of happy memories from our decade together, when she noticed something off. A series of photos, taken over several months, where Mark was tagged, but I wasn't. Group outings, dinners, a weekend trip to a mountain resort. In the background of several of these, she zoomed in. A woman. Always the same woman. Fair hair, a bright, almost artificial smile. "Who is this?" Laura asked, her voice tight. She pointed to a picture from a hiking trip, one Mark had told me he went on with his college buddies. He was laughing, his arm casually slung around this woman's waist. My stomach churned. I stared at the image, my mind racing. I'd never seen her before. Never heard of her. "I don't know," I choked out, a fresh wave of nausea washing over me. "I have no idea." Laura, ever the detective, didn't stop there. She cross-referenced the woman's face with social media. It didn't take long. Facebook. Instagram. LinkedIn. Her name was Jessica. And her profile was a public testament to a life of luxury and lavish spending. A life, I realized with a sickening lurch, that Mark was now funding. The digital breadcrumbs turned into a full-blown trail. Jessica's public posts showcased a woman who loved expensive restaurants, designer clothes, and exotic vacations. And in many of these photos, often cropped or subtly placed, was Mark. Not in a professional capacity. Not as a friend. As her partner. There were photos of them on a yacht, smiling into the sunset. Photos of them clinking champagne glasses in front of the Eiffel Tower, a trip Mark had told me was a solo business conference. Photos of them holding hands, looking intimately into each other's eyes, their smiles radiating a sickening happiness. The timeline stretched back almost a year. A whole year. My perfect suburban dream shattered into a million painful shards. He hadn't just left. He hadn't just taken the money. He had meticulously built an entire other life, a secret life, with another woman, while I was blissfully unaware, planning our future, trusting him with my entire heart and soul. The betrayal was a physical ache, sharp and debilitating. I felt like I'd been sucker-punched, winded, unable to speak, unable to move. My breath came in shallow gasps. Laura kept clicking, scrolling, her face a mask of furious concentration, occasionally muttering curses under her breath. Each new photo, each new post, was a fresh wound, twisting the knife deeper. Then came the hushed confessions. Laura started reaching out to mutual acquaintances, subtly, carefully, just checking in on Mark, haven't heard from him. The responses were hesitant at first, then, emboldened by Laura's concern, a trickle of information became a torrent. "Oh, yeah, Mark and Jessica? They've been a thing for a while, haven't they? He told me he was leaving his wife for her. Said they were soulmates. She's quite a spender. Always showing off new things Mark bought her. I saw them looking at apartments together a few months ago, really high-end stuff." My ears were ringing. The truth, ugly and undeniable, assaulted me from all sides. He wasn't just having an affair. He had systematically, methodically, planned his escape, using our shared assets to fund his new life. The puzzle pieces clicked into place, forming a horrific picture. The subtle distance I'd felt, his sudden late nights, the vague excuses, the recent push to consolidate our investments under his sole management, all of it had been part of his sinister scheme. Laura printed out bank statements she managed to access through old login information, a terrifying paper trail of transactions. The systematic draining wasn't just the savings account. It was the careful liquidation of our investment portfolios over months, the money transferred into an account I didn't recognize, then quickly out again. Our joint credit cards, cards I had thought were for emergencies or careful purchases, were maxed out, lavish hotel stays, expensive jewelry, luxury car rentals, all in cities far from where Mark claimed to be on business trips. He had even opened new lines of credit in our joint names, then immediately drawn them down to their limits. I wasn't just left with zero savings, I was left with mountains of debt. Debt he had incurred to fund his glamorous new life with Jessica, debt I was now solely responsible for. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Our perfect suburban house, the symbol of our shared dreams, was now a liability. The mortgage was due, the failed payment a chilling prelude to what was to come. Property taxes, utility bills, car payments, all hinged on the income that had vanished, and the savings that no longer existed. My financial ruin was absolute, complete, and utterly devastating. The emotional maelstrom was overwhelming. Grief for the man I thought I knew, the life I thought I had. Fury at his calculated, cold-blooded betrayal. Humiliation that everyone else seemed to know before me. Fear of a future that now seemed impossibly bleak. I felt like I was drowning, gasping for air, but there was no surface to break. My body ached with a deep, pervasive fatigue, yet sleep was impossible, haunted by images of Mark and Jessica, smiling, laughing, spending my money. My appetite vanished, food tasted like ash. I wandered through the house, a ghost in my own home, every object a painful reminder of a life that was a lie. "We need a lawyer," Laura declared, her voice firm, pulling me from my despair. Immediately. I nodded, numbly. It felt like walking into a nightmare. How do you even begin to untangle something so thoroughly, so maliciously, twisted? The first lawyer I called was a friend of Laura's family, Mr. Davies, a man with kind eyes but a no-nonsense demeanor. We met in his quiet office, the sterile environment doing little to calm my frayed nerves. I recounted the story, the words catching in my throat, my voice trembling as I laid bare the wreckage of my life. Laura sat beside me, gripping my hand, her presence a silent testament to my agony. Mr. Davies listened patiently, taking notes, his brow furrowed deeper with each detail. When I finished, the silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the hum of the air conditioning. "This is a deeply unfortunate situation, my name," he finally said, his voice grave. "And frankly, quite brazen. Your husband has committed fraud, not just infidelity." The word fraud hung in the air, a chilling confirmation of the deliberate malice behind Mark's actions. "But, can I get the money back?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, hope and fear warring within me. "Can I recover anything?" "The house, the debt." He sighed, leaning back in his chair, his expression somber. "It's going to be incredibly difficult, my name." He's clearly been planning this for a while, making it very hard to trace. And the fact that he's vanished, actively avoiding communication, complicates things immensely. We'll file for divorce, of course, and seek an injunction to freeze any assets we can locate, but frankly, if he's as thorough as you describe, most of it will be gone, liquidated, or transferred beyond immediate reach. My heart sank. So, I'm just out of luck. He gets to run off with my life savings and face no consequences? The injustice of it was a bitter taste in my mouth. "Not necessarily no consequences," Mr. Davies clarified, "but the legal process will be protracted and expensive. We'll pursue criminal charges for the fraud, but even then, recovering the funds is a separate civil matter. If he's hidden the money well, or if Jessica has spent it, tracing and recovering it will be a monumental task. The best-case scenario is a long, arduous battle with no guarantee of full recovery. The worst case is that he's made himself truly untraceable, and you're left with the debt and the emotional devastation." He outlined the grim reality, the cost of litigation, the difficulty of serving papers on a missing person, the complexities of international asset tracing if he'd moved the money offshore. He spoke of forensic accountants and private investigators, of months, possibly years, of legal battles. The sheer scale of it was overwhelming. I was already financially ruined, how could I afford to fight this? The grim reality settled over me like a suffocating blanket. I was alone, betrayed, financially devastated, and facing an uphill battle against a ghost. Mark hadn't just stolen our future, he had stolen my present and left me standing in the ruins, burdened with his debts, with the daunting prospect of a legal fight that offered little hope of true restitution. The path ahead stretched out, dark and treacherous, a testament to the devastating power of betrayal, and the cold, hard truth of financial ruin. And this, I knew, was just the beginning of the beginning. The grim reality settled over me like a suffocating blanket. I was alone, betrayed, financially devastated, and facing an uphill battle against a ghost. Mark hadn't just stolen our future, he had stolen my present and left me standing in the ruins, burdened with his debts, with the daunting prospect of a legal fight that offered little hope of true restitution. The path ahead stretched out, dark and treacherous, a testament to the devastating power of betrayal, and the cold, hard truth of financial ruin. And this, I knew, was just the beginning of the beginning. Leaving Mr. Davies' office felt like stepping out of a suffocating fog into an even colder, harsher reality. The air outside was sharp, biting, but it was nothing compared to the chill that had settled deep in my bones. Every step felt heavy, each breath a conscious effort. I was numb, yet every nerve ending felt raw and exposed. How do you even begin to pick up the pieces when the pieces are scattered across a chasm, and the person responsible has simply ceased to exist? For the first few days, I moved through life in a daze. The apartment, once our shared sanctuary, now felt like a mausoleum. Every object, every piece of furniture, screamed Mark's presence, yet he was nowhere to be found. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the anxious flutter of my own heart. I'd wander from room to room, touching things, his favorite armchair, the cookbook we used to laugh over, the framed photo of us on our honeymoon, searching for answers in the tangible, but finding only an agonizing emptiness. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford, haunted by fragmented memories and the crushing weight of everything I'd lost. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, reaching for him, only to be met by the vast, empty space on his side of the bed. Then the memories would flood back, the failed mortgage payment, the empty accounts, Jessica's smiling face. And the sheer, unfathomable betrayal. Laura, bless her heart, was a constant presence. She'd bring over meals I barely touched, sit with me in silence, or gently push me to talk. "You have to eat, my name," she'd say, her voice soft but firm. "You have to fight." Her words, though well-intentioned, often felt like a cruel joke. Fight what? A ghost? A mountain of debt? My own crushing despair? But eventually, the sheer urgency of my situation started to chip away at the numbness. The mortgage company was calling daily, the credit card statements were piling up, and the realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I was sinking. Rapidly. I couldn't just lie there and drown. I had to move. I had to survive. The first step was the hardest, selling the house. Our house. The place we'd painstakingly renovated, chosen every paint color, every fixture, dreamed of raising a family in. It was a beautiful, 3-bedroom suburban home with a big backyard, perfect for summer barbecues and future children's laughter. Mark and I had spent nearly a decade building our life there, pouring our hearts and souls, and every penny of our savings, into making it our own. Now, it was just a liability, a gaping wound bleeding me dry with its mortgage payments and maintenance costs. Listing it was agonizing. Every agent I spoke to gave me the same grim news. The market wasn't great, and without a substantial down payment from my own pocket, which, of course, no longer existed, I'd be lucky to break even, let alone turn a profit. And I couldn't wait. I needed to offload it, fast. The pressure was immense. I had to sell it as is, unable to afford even minor repairs, let alone staging. It felt like I was giving away a piece of myself, a chunk of my very soul, just to stop the bleeding. Walking through it for the last time before the new owners took possession was one of the most painful experiences of my life. Each room was an echo chamber of what used to be. The kitchen where Mark would make his terrible but enthusiastic Sunday morning pancakes. The living room where we'd curl up on the couch, watching movies on rainy Saturdays. The bedroom where we'd shared so much intimacy, so many whispered dreams. It wasn't just losing a house. It was losing the tangible representation of my entire life with Mark, every memory, every promise, every future plan. I ran my hand over the kitchen counter, the smooth, cool surface, and felt a tear slip down my cheek. This wasn't just a transaction, it was an amputation. And when the final papers were signed, after the real estate agent had deducted their commission and the bank had taken its pound of flesh for the remaining mortgage, I was left with a pittance. Barely enough to cover a few months of Mark's outstanding credit card debt. The dream house, the foundation of our life, had become a financial black hole that swallowed everything I had left. With the house gone, I had nowhere to go. My parents, God bless them, immediately offered their home. It was a lifeline, but also a fresh wave of humiliation. I was 35 years old, a professional, supposedly a successful married woman with a good career. Now I was moving back into my childhood bedroom, feeling like a broken, defeated child. Their house, while familiar, felt small and stifling. My old posters were still on the walls, a relic of a life I'd long outgrown, a stark contrast to the sophisticated home I'd just left. The irony was not lost on me, from our beautiful suburban dream house to my childhood twin bed, all thanks to one man's despicable betrayal. My parents were incredibly supportive, never once making me feel like a burden, but the shame was a heavy cloak I wore every day. Every morning, making coffee in their kitchen, seeing their worried eyes, hearing their hushed conversations about how I was doing, it was a constant reminder of my failure, of how utterly I'd been derailed. I'd try to act normal, to reassure them, but inside, I felt like a cracked vase, fragile and leaking. I missed my independence, my space, the simple act of choosing what to cook for dinner without considering anyone else. It was a regression, a retreat into a past I thought I'd long since left behind. But the biggest struggle wasn't just the emotional toll, it was the relentless financial pressure. Mark hadn't just emptied our savings, he'd taken out loans in our joint names, maxed out credit cards I'd thought were long paid off, and even opened new lines of credit without my knowledge. The initial shock of seeing the empty bank account was quickly overshadowed by the avalanche of bills that followed. My credit score, once impeccable, plummeted. Creditors started calling. I was being hounded for debts I hadn't incurred, but for which I was legally responsible because of Mark's deceit. I had my good job, yes, but it barely covered the escalating legal fees with Mr. Davies, let alone the monthly minimums on Mark's abandoned debts. I needed more. Desperately. So, I started working multiple jobs. During the day, I was the capable professional, putting on a brave face, but evenings and weekends were a blur of exhaustion. I took a part-time job as a barista at a coffee shop in a different neighborhood, hoping to avoid anyone I knew. The hours were brutal, the pay minimal, but every dollar counted. I also started freelancing online, editing papers and articles late into the night, fueled by caffeine and sheer adrenaline. The routine was soul-crushing. Wake up before dawn, head to my main job, rush to the coffee shop, come home, work on freelance projects until my eyes burned, and then collapse into bed, only to repeat it all again. There were days I'd forget to eat, or just grab whatever was quickest, sacrificing my health for the sake of staying afloat. My body ached constantly, my mind was perpetually foggy, and my emotional reserves were completely depleted. I felt like a hamster on a wheel, running faster and faster, but never quite getting ahead. Every dollar I earned, every extra hour I put in, felt like it was going straight into the black hole Mark had created, a bottomless pit of his irresponsibility and my subsequent financial ruin. It wasn't just that my savings were gone, it was that I was actively working to pay for his lavish lifestyle with Jessica, the thought of which made my stomach churn with fury. A decade of carefully built savings, a nest egg for retirement, a down payment for our future, all gone. Evaporated. Reduced to a series of zeros on a bank statement, a cruel reminder of my vulnerability and his ruthlessness. Beyond the financial and physical strain, there was the crushing weight of public humiliation. News travels fast in a small suburban community. It started with whispers, then became open gossip. Friends, acquaintances, even strangers at the grocery store would look at me with a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. I could feel their eyes on me, hear the hushed conversations stop as I walked past. "That's her, you know, Mark's wife. He ran off with all her money." My story became local folklore, a cautionary tale. It felt like every mistake, every vulnerability, every shred of my dignity was stripped bare for public consumption. I became the poor woman whose husband. It wasn't just that I'd been betrayed, I was publicly shamed for it, as if his actions were somehow my fault, as if I had failed to see it coming. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, to tell them the full, ugly truth, but what was the point? The narrative was set. I tried to avoid social gatherings, to shop in different towns, to become as invisible as possible, but there was no escaping the judgment, the pity, the feeling of being constantly exposed. It was in those darkest moments, when I felt utterly alone, completely exposed, and on the verge of breaking down, that the first tiny sparks of resilience began to flicker. I'd be scrubbing down the coffee machine at 10 p.m., my feet aching, my mind numb, and suddenly a fierce anger would surge through me. No, I would not let him win. I would not let him break me completely. He took my money, my house, my sense of security, but he would not take my spirit. The fight, initially fueled by desperation, slowly began to morph into something else, a grim determination. A stubborn refusal to yield. There were days I'd cry into my pillow until it was soaked, then wipe my eyes, square my shoulders, and force myself to face another day. It wasn't about forgiveness or moving on yet, it was about sheer, bloody-minded survival. I started small. I'd make sure to eat at least one proper meal a day, even if it was just a microwave dinner. I'd allow myself 10 minutes of mindless TV before bed. These small acts of self-care felt like huge victories, tiny affirmations that I was still here, still fighting. Meanwhile, the legal battle with Mark was a frustrating, agonizing exercise in futility. Mr. Davies was doing everything he could, filing for divorce, attempting to freeze any assets, pursuing criminal charges for fraud. But it all came down to one crucial, insurmountable obstacle: we couldn't find Mark. He had vanished into thin air. His phone remained off. His family, when contacted, claimed they hadn't heard from him either, offering vague, evasive answers that made my blood boil. Oh, Mark? He's traveling, I think. You know how he is, a free spirit. A free spirit who had stolen everything from me. Mr. Davies hired a private investigator, a gruff, laconic man named Frank who specialized in tracking down missing persons. Frank spent weeks delving into Mark's digital footprint, his known haunts, his friends, his professional contacts. He traced every financial transaction, every credit card statement Mark had left behind. But it was like chasing smoke. Mark had been incredibly thorough, covering his tracks with meticulous precision. He hadn't just left, he had disappeared. Every lead went cold. Every attempt to serve him with legal papers failed. He simply wasn't at his old work address, his old friends hadn't seen him, and his family swore ignorance. The legal system, designed to protect victims, felt powerless against a perpetrator who simply refused to be found. We can't move forward with the divorce until we serve him, my name, Mr. Davies explained, his voice laced with his own frustration. And we can't pursue many of the financial claims in civil court without him being aware of the proceedings. He's deliberately making himself untraceable to avoid his legal obligations. It was an endless, Kafkaesque loop. I was trapped in legal limbo, spending money I didn't have on a chase that yielded no results. The costs of the private investigator, the court fees, the legal filings, it all added up, digging me deeper into debt, all for the futile pursuit of a man who didn't want to be found. The fury I felt was a cold, constant fire in my gut. How dare he? How dare he steal my life, then simply vanish, leaving me to shoulder the burden of his crimes, while he presumably lived a life of luxury with Jessica, funded by my hard-earned money. He was free, enjoying the spoils of his betrayal, while I was drowning in the wreckage. Every failed attempt to locate him, every dead end, every call from Mr. Davies with another piece of disappointing news, just twisted the knife deeper. It wasn't just the money anymore, it was the blatant injustice of it all, the feeling of being utterly powerless in the face of such calculated evil. The despair was immense, but so was the rage. And that rage, I realized, was slowly hardening into resolve. He wouldn't get away with it. Not forever. He couldn't. I refused to let him. The rage was a cold comfort, a steady flame that kept me from collapsing entirely. But it couldn't pay the bills, couldn't stop the bank from calling, couldn't conjure Mark out of thin air to face justice. After months of dead ends, mounting legal fees, and the crushing weight of knowing I was essentially throwing good money after bad in the fruitless pursuit of a ghost, Mr. Davies sat me down. His eyes, usually sharp and determined, held a weary sympathy. "We've explored every avenue, my name," he said, his voice softer than usual. "He's made himself untraceable. We can keep trying, but it will continue to drain your resources without any guarantee of success. Sometimes, the best strategy is to focus on rebuilding your own life first. If he resurfaces, we'll be ready." It was the hardest truth I'd ever heard. It meant admitting defeat, at least for now. It meant Mark had, in a twisted way, won this round. He'd stolen everything, then vanished, leaving me to clean up his mess. The injustice of it was a bitter, choking taste in my mouth, but the alternative was financial ruin compounded by legal fees. I had to let go of the immediate pursuit, at least temporarily, and focus on surviving. The first step was the house. Our house. The one we'd bought together, lovingly renovated, filled with dreams and memories. Now, every corner held a ghost, every surface a painful reminder of what I'd lost. It was too big, too expensive, and utterly poisoned by Mark's betrayal. Selling it was a necessity, but it felt like tearing a part of myself out. The market wasn't great, and I was desperate. I sold it at a loss, barely enough to cover the mortgage and the immediate debts Mark had left me with, certainly not enough to start fresh. The day I handed over the keys, I didn't look back. I just got in my car and drove away, a hollow ache where my heart used to be. Moving back in with my parents was a blow to my pride that felt almost as painful as the betrayal itself. I was 33 years old, successful, independent, and now I was living in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by faded posters and dusty trophies. My parents, bless their hearts, were angels. They never said, "I told you so," never made me feel like a burden. They just wrapped me in their quiet love, offering comfort and a safe haven. But the humiliation was internal, a constant companion. Every time I ran into an old high school acquaintance at the grocery store, their pitying glances felt like daggers. The whispers followed me, "Did you hear about Mark? Poor, my name, what a rotten thing to do." I tried to avoid social situations, to disappear into the anonymity of my parents' quiet suburb, but the shame clung to me like a shroud. Survival became my sole focus. My old job was still there, a lifeline, but it wasn't enough. Mark had cleaned out our savings, maxed out joint credit cards, and left me with a mountain of debt that I was legally responsible for. So, I took on a second job, then a third. During the day, I was at my marketing job, trying to put a brave face on for my colleagues. In the evenings, I waited tables at a local diner, wiping down sticky counters and enduring rude customers. On weekends, I picked up freelance proofreading gigs, hunched over my laptop long after my parents had gone to bed. I was exhausted, perpetually running on fumes. My body ached, my eyes were constantly tired, and my mind felt like a tangled mess of numbers and obligations. Every spare penny went towards chipping away at the debt, towards slowly, painstakingly rebuilding my credit score, which had plummeted thanks to Mark's reckless spending. There were days I wanted to give up, to just curl into a ball and let the world swallow me whole. Days when the sheer unfairness of it all felt like a physical weight, pressing down on my chest until I could barely breathe. I cried in the shower, cried into my pillow, cried in my car on the way to my next shift. But then I would think of Mark, living his lavish life with Jessica, enjoying the fruits of my labor, and a spark of that cold fury would ignite again. He wouldn't get away with it. I wouldn't let him win by letting myself fall apart. Laura, my best friend, was my rock. She listened without judgment, brought me terrible takeout when I was too tired to cook, and dragged me out for coffee even when I protested I couldn't afford it. She reminded me of who I was before Mark, of my strength and resilience. "You built this life once, my name," she'd say, squeezing my hand. "You can build an even better one now." Slowly, agonizingly slowly, a semblance of a life began to emerge from the wreckage. Months blurred into a year. The initial, raw grief began to morph into something more manageable, a dull ache rather than a gaping wound. I started exercising again, not just for my physical health, but for the mental clarity it brought. I reconnected with hobbies I'd abandoned, rediscovered the quiet joy of a good book, a long walk in the park. My credit score, through sheer grit and sacrifice, began to climb back into respectable territory. It was a tiny victory, but it felt monumental. It meant I could start looking for my own place again. Not a house, not yet, but an apartment. A small, one-bedroom apartment on the other side of town, away from the familiar haunts of my old life, a place where I could truly start fresh. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. No shared memories, no ghosts lurking in the corners. Just a blank canvas, ready for me to paint my own future. Moving into that apartment felt like taking my first independent breath in over a year. It was small, cozy, and every piece of furniture I bought, a second-hand sofa, a sturdy kitchen table, felt like a triumph. I decorated it simply, with things that brought me joy, not things Mark would have liked. It was a quiet rebellion, a reclaiming of my aesthetic, my identity. The wound of Mark's betrayal was still there, a jagged scar across my heart, but it was no longer an open gash. It was healing, slowly, painstakingly, beneath layers of resilience and newfound independence. I was still wary, still guarded, but I was also stronger. I was rebuilding, piece by painful piece. Then, the whispers started. They came subtly at first, like faint rustlings in the leaves. I'd run into a former mutual acquaintance at the grocery store, someone who'd known Mark and me as the perfect couple. After the initial awkward pleasantries and veiled expressions of sympathy, they'd almost always drop a casual nugget of information. "Oh, you know, I saw Mark the other day," one woman, Sarah, chirped brightly, then immediately looked horrified. "Oh. I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have said anything." I just shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "It's fine, Sarah." "How was he?" She bit her lip. "He seemed a bit off, actually. Not his usual put-together self. He looked a little stressed, if I'm honest." I dismissed it. Of course, he looked stressed. Being a fugitive from justice probably wasn't a picnic. I didn't care. My healing was paramount. His problems were his own, and frankly, he deserved every single one of them. But the whispers grew more persistent, more varied. Laura, still very much connected to our old social circle even if I wasn't, would occasionally recount a tidbit she'd heard. Apparently, Jessica's spending like water, she mentioned one evening over wine. Someone saw her at that new boutique downtown, dropping serious cash on a handbag. I snorted. Well, good for her. It's not like she's spending my money anymore. Or, hopefully, not all of it. Laura gave me a look. No, but the way they talked about it, like it was extravagant even for them. And Mark was apparently with her, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Another time, a former colleague from my old firm, someone Mark had occasionally socialized with, sent me a message. Hey, my name, hope you're doing well. Random, but I heard Mark was complaining about cash flow issues. Thought it was weird since he was always so careful with money before. Guess he's changed. Cash flow issues, the irony was almost comical. Mark, the man who'd meticulously managed every penny of our joint savings, who'd built spreadsheets for our retirement and insisted on budgeting for every vacation. Now he was complaining about cash flow? It sounded so un-Mark-like. But still, I pushed it away. It wasn't my problem. I had enough of my own. I was finally finding peace, finding stability. Why would I invite his chaos back into my life, even through gossip? Yet, the hints kept coming. They were like tiny, annoying gnats, buzzing around the edges of my hard-won peace. He's not as put together as he used to be. Jessica's absolutely burning through money. They're always traveling, but someone said his new job isn't as lucrative as he'd made out. Each snippet was trivial on its own, easily ignorable. But collectively, they started to form a vague, unsettling pattern. My carefully constructed wall of indifference, built brick by painful brick over the last year, began to develop hairline cracks. A morbid curiosity, a flicker of something almost akin to satisfaction, began to stir in the depths of my gut. One evening, I was curled up on my small sofa, finally relaxing after a grueling day, lost in the pages of a novel. My phone, which I usually kept on silent, buzzed on the coffee table. I glanced at the screen. Unfamiliar number. It was late, past 8 o'clock. I hesitated, then let it go to voicemail. I didn't recognize the area code. Probably a telemarketer. A few minutes later, the notification for a new voicemail popped up. Sighing, I picked up the phone, expecting to delete it without listening. But then I saw the timestamp. It was from just a moment ago. Curiosity got the better of me. I tapped to listen. The voice that filtered through the speaker was distorted, slightly staticky, but utterly unmistakable. My heart gave a violent lurch, slamming against my ribs. It was Mark. He wasn't speaking in his usual calm, measured tone. This was rushed, almost frantic. His words tumbled out, punctuated by ragged breaths. Hey, my name, it's Mark. Listen, I know this is out of the blue. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. But, things are complicated. Really complicated. I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Jessica, things with Jessica are not good. I really need your help. Please. Call me back. It's important. Please. The message ended abruptly, leaving a void of ringing silence in my apartment. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Mark. After a year of silence, a year of him being an uncatchable ghost, he was back. And he wasn't calling to apologize. He wasn't calling to confess his remorse. He was calling because he needed something. His voice wasn't apologetic, it was desperate. Harried. Like a cornered animal. And he wanted my help. The audacity of it took my breath away. After everything he'd done, after shattering my life into a million pieces, he had the gall to ask for my help? A cold, hard laugh bubbled up in my throat, laced with an unsettling mix of disbelief and a flicker of something dark and potent. It was clear his paradise wasn't so perfect after all. And that thought, I had to admit, brought a grim, satisfying chill that settled deep in my bones. The message ended abruptly, leaving a void of ringing silence in my apartment. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Mark. After a year of silence, a year of him being an uncatchable ghost, he was back. And he wasn't calling to apologize. He wasn't calling to confess his remorse. He was calling because he needed something. His voice wasn't apologetic, it was desperate. Harried. Like a cornered animal. And he wanted my help. The audacity of it took my breath away. After everything he'd done, after shattering my life into a million pieces, he had the gall to ask for my help? A cold, hard laugh bubbled up in my throat, laced with an unsettling mix of disbelief and a flicker of something dark and potent. It was clear his paradise wasn't so perfect after all. And that thought, I had to admit, brought a grim, satisfying chill that settled deep in my bones. I sat there for a long time, the phone still clutched in my hand, the ghost of his frantic voice echoing in the quiet of my apartment. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Fury, hot and immediate, that he dared to contact me. Disgust, at his transparent self-pity and his presumption. But underneath it all, a sliver of that morbid curiosity, now fully blossomed. What exactly was so complicated? What kind of problems could possibly be so dire that Mark, the man who'd abandoned me without a second thought, was reduced to begging me for help? The questions gnawed at me, insidious and unwelcome, yet impossible to ignore. I went to bed that night feeling a restless energy thrumming beneath my skin. Sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, not as the loving husband I once knew, but as the stranger who had emptied our life savings. And then I heard his voice, ragged and strained, asking for help. The irony was a bitter pill. For a year, I had longed for an explanation, for an apology, for some sign that he recognized the magnitude of his betrayal. Now, he was offering a twisted version of interaction, not for my sake, but for his own. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. And again. And again. Texts mostly, short and increasingly frantic. They came from the same unfamiliar number. *Hey, it's Mark. Did you get my voicemail? Please call me. Look, I know you're mad. You have every right to be. But this is really important. Jessica and I, things are bad. Really bad. I need to talk to someone who understands. Please, my name. Just 5 minutes. I promise I wouldn't bother you if it wasn't urgent. No mention of my pain. No acknowledgement of the financial ruin he'd inflicted. Just him. His problems. His urgency. His need. It was typical Mark, always the victim in his own narrative, even when he was the architect of someone else's destruction. My thumb hovered over the block option more times than I could count. Laura was vehement. Block him. Why are you even hesitating? He doesn't deserve an ounce of your attention, let alone your time. He's a parasite, my name. Don't let him suck you back in. She was right, of course. Everything in me screamed to shut him out, to re-erect the walls I'd so painstakingly built. But that unsettling curiosity persisted. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. Horrific, but impossible to look away. And I'd be lying if I didn't admit to a certain macabre satisfaction. Karma, it seemed, was a cruel mistress, and she was starting to circle Mark. I know, I'd told Laura, my voice laced with a confusion I truly felt. It's just his voice. He sounded so different. So desperate. And it's not even an apology, it's a demand for my help. It's so wildly out of character for the Mark I knew, the Mark who left me. He's a different person now, honey, Laura said gently, but firmly. He always was. You just didn't see it until he decided to show you. Don't fall for his manipulation. This is probably just another ploy. Her words resonated, and I knew she was speaking from a place of fierce loyalty and love. But still, something kept me from hitting that block button. It wasn't forgiveness, not even close. It was a dark, primal urge to witness the unraveling, to see just how low he'd fallen. Part of me, a small, vindictive part, wanted to hear the details of his downfall. To know that his paradise had indeed crumbled, just as mine had. The calls continued, sporadic but relentless. Sometimes voicemails, sometimes just unanswered rings. Each one a tiny tremor in the carefully restabilized ground beneath my feet. They interrupted my work, buzzed during quiet evenings, invaded my thoughts during otherwise peaceful moments. It was like a constant, low-level hum of anxiety, a reminder that the past was not entirely in the past. One evening, after another exhausting day at the accounting firm where I'd managed to secure a junior position, a far cry from the comfortable managerial role I'd held before Mark's betrayal, I was making a simple dinner. My hands, usually steady, trembled slightly as I chopped vegetables. The stress of the day, combined with the underlying tension of Mark's persistent attempts to reach me, was getting to me. I hated that he still had this power, this ability to disturb my peace. My phone rang again, vibrating loudly on the kitchen counter. It was the unfamiliar number. I stared at it for a long moment, my breath catching in my throat. I could block him. I should block him. But the thought of never knowing, of leaving this chapter of his life a mystery, suddenly felt unbearable. It wasn't about him anymore, I told myself. It was about me. About closure. About truly understanding the scope of his wretchedness, and perhaps, confirming that the universe had, indeed, come full circle. My hand moved without conscious thought, my finger swiping to answer. Hello? My voice was flat, devoid of emotion, like chipped ice. I didn't want him to hear any hint of the turbulent emotions churning inside me. I would give him nothing. There was a pause on the other end, a sharp intake of breath, then a rush of words. Oh my God, my name. You answered. Thank God. I've been trying to reach you for days. Weeks. I knew you would. I knew you'd understand. The sheer arrogance of it. Understand what, Mark? My voice was still an Arctic breeze. You have exactly 60 seconds. Start talking, or I'm hanging up. And then you can forget about ever reaching me again. His frantic tone was immediately back. No, okay. 60 seconds. Look, it's Jessica. She's completely insane. You wouldn't believe it. The spending, my name. It's out of control. Like, truly out of control. I don't know what to do. He paused, clearly expecting me to offer some kind of sympathy or question. I remained silent, letting the heavy quiet hang between us. He pressed on, his words tumbling over each other. She doesn't stop. New clothes every day, designer bags, fancy restaurants, vacations to places I can't even pronounce. And she says it's our money, but it was my money, you know? My investments, my savings. I mean, after I left, I had to start fresh, but I was building things up again, and she blew through it all. Maxed out the credit cards we opened together. I'm drowning, my name. Utterly drowning in debt. A bitter, almost hysterical laugh threatened to escape me, but I swallowed it down, hard. His investments? His savings? Maxed out credit cards? He was describing, almost to the letter, the situation he'd left me in. The irony was so thick I could almost taste it. He was oblivious, completely and utterly blind to the mirroring of his own actions. He wasn't connecting the dots, not in the way I was. He was just complaining, self-pitying, expecting me to commiserate. And she's just gone, sometimes, he continued, his voice cracking slightly. Just disappears for days, no explanation. I try to talk to her, try to make her see reason, but she just laughs. Says I'm cheap. Says I'm not giving her the life she deserves. The life I promised her. But I never promised her this. I never said I'd just let her spend everything until there's nothing left. She's completely drained our joint account, my name. Completely empty. I don't even have enough for rent this month. The landlord is threatening eviction. My mind flashed back to that Tuesday morning, the email notification for a failed mortgage payment. The emptiness of our joint account. The sickening lurch in my stomach. The terror of facing a future with nothing. It was all there, recounted by him, but now he was the victim. He truly sounded distressed, genuinely scared. But the sheer audacity of him explaining his financial ruin to me, the person he had financially ruined, was almost breathtaking. I don't know what to do, he whimpered. I have nowhere to go. My parents won't talk to me. Jessica's family hates me. I thought maybe you'd. I don't know. You always knew how to handle money, how to budget. You always had a plan. I don't have anyone else to turn to. His plea for advice, for my financial acumen, was the final straw. He wanted me to fix his mess, the same way I'd been forced to fix the mess he'd made of my life. He hadn't changed at all. He still saw me as a resource, a tool to be used, rather than a human being he had profoundly wronged. Mark, I cut him off, my voice still cold, but with an edge of steel that I hadn't known I possessed. My 60 seconds are up. Actually, they were up about 5 minutes ago. You drained my accounts. You left me with nothing but debt. You abandoned me without a word. I lost my house, my savings, my entire future because of you. There was silence on his end, a sudden, stunned quiet. I had to rebuild my life from scratch, I continued, my voice gaining strength, each word a hammer blow. I worked multiple jobs, I moved back in with my parents, I fought tooth and nail to get out of the financial hole you dug for me. You came to me today, not to apologize, not to express remorse for what you did to me, but to whine about your own problems. Problems that, from what I can hear, are a direct consequence of your own choices. Your choices to run off with Jessica. Your choices to let her spend your money. I took a deep breath, letting the words sink in. I don't care about Jessica. I don't care about your debts. And I certainly don't care about your eviction notice. You made your bed, Mark. Now you get to lie in it. You are not my problem. You haven't been my problem for a year. And you will never be my problem again. But what do I do? His voice was a thin, desperate thread. I have nothing. I'm completely broke. And Jessica, she's gone again. I don't even know where she is. She just took everything. Just like I. He trailed off, the implicit comparison finally seeming to dawn on him. A grim satisfaction settled over me, chilling and absolute. He saw it. He understood, however dimly, the poetic justice of his situation. But it didn't change my resolve. That's not my concern, Mark, I said, my voice firm and unwavering. Find a shelter. Call your family. Sell something. Figure it out. Just like I had to. And then, without waiting for another word, I pressed the end call button. The silence that followed was profound, a sudden, heavy quiet that felt like a physical weight lifting from my shoulders. My hand was still shaking, but now it was from adrenaline, not fear. I stood in my small kitchen, the scent of fresh vegetables still in the air, but my appetite completely gone. The conversation had left me with a strange, unsettling blend of emotions. Vindication, yes, searing and satisfying. The universe really did have a twisted sense of humor. But also, a lingering chill. His desperation had been palpable, his fear very real. And the way he described Jessica's actions, her systematic emptying of his accounts, the sudden disappearance, it echoed my own nightmare so perfectly it sent a shiver down my spine. His paradise wasn't just crumbling, it had collapsed entirely. And he was standing in the ruins, just like I had been a year ago. It wasn't pity I felt for him, not truly. It was more like observing a fascinating, tragic, and deeply ironic experiment from a safe distance. But beneath that grim satisfaction, a flicker of something else stirred. A question. How far would this go? How much further could his life unravel? And what, if anything, would that mean for me? My initial thought was that he'd try calling back. That he'd continue to pester me, maybe even escalating to texts if I blocked his number. I kept my phone clutched in my hand, half expecting it to light up again, but it remained dark, silent. The silence was heavier this time, pregnant with an unspoken weight. It felt unfinished. Like the end of a bad dream where you wake up still feeling the lingering dread. I tried to shake it off, to push Mark and his pathetic, self-inflicted misery out of my mind. It was a Tuesday evening, a night I usually reserved for catching up on a new series or reading, something to unwind after a long day at work. But the quiet hum of my small apartment, the reassuring familiarity of my rebuilt life, felt invaded. His voice, thin and desperate, still echoed in my ears. I finally put my phone down on the counter, walked over to the window, and looked out at the street below. My new apartment was on the second floor of an old but beautifully renovated building in a quieter part of town. It wasn't the spacious suburban house Mark and I had shared, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every carefully chosen lamp, every plant was a testament to my struggle, my survival, my slow, painful resurrection. This place was my sanctuary. A sudden, sharp knock on my apartment door made me jump, my heart leaping into my throat. It wasn't a timid rap, but a series of urgent, insistent thuds that vibrated through the old wood. I froze, my gaze darting from the door to the peephole, then back to my phone. Who could that be? Laura usually called before she came over. My parents lived too far. I wasn't expecting anyone. Another round of knocking, more desperate this time, louder. Hello? Is anyone home? The voice, muffled through the door, was unmistakable. Mark. Panic, cold and sharp, shot through me. How did he know where I lived? I'd made sure to keep my new address under wraps, only sharing it with Laura and my parents. The thought of him tracking me down, standing on my doorstep, made my blood run cold. It felt like an invasion, a violation of the safe space I'd fought so hard to create. I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at the door, willing him to disappear. The knocking continued, growing more frantic, punctuated by his increasingly strange voice. Please, it's Mark. I know you're in there. I need to talk to you. My mind raced. Should I call the police? Should I just ignore him until he left? But the sheer persistence in his knocking, the desperation in his tone, suggested he wouldn't give up easily. He sounded unhinged, like a cornered animal. This wasn't the confident, smooth-talking Mark I'd known, or even the Mark from the phone call. This was something else entirely. After what felt like an eternity, the knocking paused. I held my breath, listening, hoping. Then, a softer, more pleading voice, right outside my door. Please, just for a minute. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't an emergency. I have nowhere else to go. The words sliced through my fear, igniting a fresh spark of something I didn't want to name. Curiosity, perhaps. Or a morbid fascination, the kind that makes you rubberneck at a car crash. I hated him. I truly did. But the man on the other side of that door was a mystery, a disaster unfolding in real time, and part of me, the part that had been so utterly destroyed by him, felt a perverse need to witness it. Slowly, cautiously, I approached the door. I peered through the peephole. My breath hitched. It was him, all right. But it wasn't the Mark I remembered. The man framed in the distorted lens was a ghost of my husband. His expensive tailored suits were gone, replaced by a rumpled, stained t-shirt and jeans that looked like they hadn't seen a washing machine in weeks. His usually immaculate hair was a greasy, tangled mess, falling across a forehead that was deeply creased with worry lines. His eyes, usually bright and calculating, were sunken and bloodshot, flickering with a wild, desperate energy I'd never seen before. A faint stubble, more patchy than full, covered his jaw, and he looked thin, almost gaunt. He clutched a worn, threadbare backpack to his chest, like a shield. He looked utterly, irrevocably broken. My finger hovered over the deadbolt. Every instinct screamed at me to keep the door locked, to call for help, to protect myself from the man who had so casually destroyed my life. But another part, the one still reeling from the phone call, the one that had witnessed his slow descent over the past few weeks, urged me to open it. To see the full extent of his downfall. To get the answers he clearly wanted to give. With a jolt, I unlocked the door, my hand trembling. I opened it just a crack, keeping the security chain latched. What do you want, Mark? My voice was colder than I intended, laced with a venom I didn't try to hide. His head snapped up, his bloodshot eyes widening at the sight of me. A flicker of something, relief? Shame? Crossed his face, but it was quickly replaced by raw desperation. "Please, my name," he rasped, his voice hoarse. "I need to talk to you. I wouldn't have come here if it wasn't urgent. Everything's gone wrong." "I told you on the phone," I said, pushing against the door slightly to make sure the chain held. "Your problems are not my problems." "And how did you even find me?" He flinched, looking away. "It doesn't matter how I found you. Jessica, she took everything. I have nowhere to go. No money. No phone. They're evicting me from the apartment today. I swear, I'm not lying." His voice cracked on the last word. "She left me with absolutely nothing. Just like I left you." The words hung in the air, a chilling echo. "Just like I left you," he said it. He finally said it. But it wasn't an apology. It was a statement of fact, a plea for understanding, a desperate attempt to draw parallels between his suffering and mine. "You think comparing your situation to mine is going to win you any sympathy?" I scoffed, though my gut was twisting. The sheer audacity of him, to show up here, looking like that, saying those words. No, I need to explain. I need your help. You're the only one who can understand. Please, can I just come in? I swear I won't cause any trouble. I just need to sit down. I haven't slept in days." His eyes were wide, pleading, and I could smell a faint odor of stale alcohol and desperation radiating from him, even through the crack in the door. I hesitated. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to shut the door, to call the police, to protect my fragile peace. But the sheer spectacle of it all, the unbelievable, twisted irony of the situation, was a powerful magnet. To hear him admit it, to see him so utterly destroyed by the very same tactic he'd used, it was a morbid curiosity I couldn't ignore. And what if he was truly dangerous? Better to keep him contained, perhaps. "Fine," I said, my voice clipped, "but you sit right there." I pointed to the armchair furthest from the door, "and you tell me everything, quickly. And if you make one wrong move, if you raise your voice, I call the police. Understood?" He nodded frantically, a desperate eagerness in his eyes. "Understood. Thank you. Thank you so much." I unlatched the chain, my hand still shaking, and opened the door just enough for him to squeeze through. He practically stumbled into my small living room, his eyes darting around, taking in the space. I closed the door quickly, relatching it and throwing the deadbolt. The security measures felt like a flimsy shield against the chaos he brought with him. He immediately dropped his backpack and sank onto the armchair I'd indicated, looking utterly spent. He ran a hand through his matted hair, his shoulders slumping. He looked like he was about to cry, or throw up. I stood in the middle of the room, arms crossed, maintaining a safe distance. "So," I said, my voice deliberately flat. "You wanted to explain." "Explain what, exactly? How Jessica finally got tired of you? Or how you finally ran out of my money?" The bitterness was unavoidable. He flinched again at the mention of Jessica, and then at the pointed reminder of where the money had come from. "No, it's not like that," he began, his voice barely a whisper. "Jessica, she's gone. She left. And she took everything. Literally everything." He lifted his head, his eyes meeting mine, brimming with a pathetic mixture of shock and incomprehension. "She cleaned out all our accounts. Our joint accounts. The investments. She took the car. The jewelry. She even sold some of my watches behind my back, I think. Just vanished. Poof. Gone. Like she was never there." My mind flashed back to that Tuesday morning, the email notification, the empty bank account, the sickening realization. Asterisk poof. Gone. Like she was never there, asterisk. The words were an almost exact replica of my own thoughts a year ago. The hair on my arms stood on end. "She did what?" I asked, my voice barely audible, trying to wrap my head around the horrifying symmetry of it all. The money, he continued, a fresh wave of self-pity washing over his face. All of it. Our entire life savings. The money the money we had accumulated together. The money I invested. She took it all. She saw how I did it to you, my name. She learned from it. She saw how easy it was, how I got away with it. She copied me. A cold, hard laugh escaped my lips, a sound I hadn't known I was capable of. It was humorless, brittle, filled with a terrible, vindictive satisfaction. She copied you? I repeated, the irony so sharp it was almost painful. You mean she saw how you systematically stole every penny from your wife, left her destitute, and decided that was a blueprint for her own escape? He hung his head, running his hands over his face. I don't know. I guess. I didn't think. I never thought she would do it to me. His voice was muffled, thick with disbelief. She was so charming. So loving. She said she wanted to build a life with me. Oh, Mark, I said, the words heavy with sarcasm, I'm sure she did. Just like you said you wanted to build a life with me. He looked up again, his eyes welling with tears. It's different. You don't understand. She was a professional. A con artist. She played the long game. She told me she loved me, that she wanted to start a family. We even talked about getting married. She knew all my passwords, all my accounts. She convinced me to put everything in joint names, to invest in these amazing opportunities she knew about. Said it was for our future, for our dream home. Oh, I understand, Mark, I interjected, a new, chilling anger rising within me. I understand perfectly. Because that's exactly what you did to me. You wanted a dream home. You wanted a future. You got me to trust you with every single penny we had, and then you stole it all. My voice was rising now, unable to contain the surge of emotion. And those amazing opportunities you invested in? Was that with my money, Mark? The money you took from my accounts? The life savings I built over a decade working my butt off? He winced, shrinking further into the armchair. Some of it, yes. A lot of it, actually. I figured it was smart. To grow it. For our new life. For Jessica and me. He looked so small, so pathetic, it was almost hard to believe this was the same man who had once been so smug, so cruel. But she took it all. Everything. Every single investment. All the money I transferred to her, all the money in the joint account. She even drained my personal checking account, the one I thought she didn't know about, right down to the last cent. I have nothing. Not even enough for a bus ticket. The scale of it, the cold, calculated mirror image of his own crime, was staggering. It wasn't just that he was broke, it was how he became broke. By the very hands that had allegedly loved him, using the very tactics he had perfected. Jessica hadn't just left him, she had deconstructed him, piece by agonizing piece, just as he had done to me. So, the woman you ran off with, the one you stole our entire life from to be with, the one you thought was your new paradise, she stole everything from you, too? I felt a strange, detached disbelief. It was almost too perfect, too karmic. She used your own playbook against you. He nodded, a single tear tracing a clean path down his grimy cheek. Yes. Exactly. She just disappeared. One morning, I woke up, and she was gone. Her clothes were gone. Her car was gone. And then I checked the accounts. All of them. Empty. Utterly empty. I tried to call her, but her phone was disconnected. Her social media deleted. She just vanished into thin air. The words. They were my words. My experience. My nightmare. He was recounting my story, but with him in the victim's role and Jessica in his. It was a bizarre, horrifying hallucination. "And you came here," I said, my voice flat, "to tell me this?" I didn't know where else to go," he stammered, looking up at me, his eyes pleading. "You're the only one who knows what this feels like. The only one who understands. I know what I did was wrong. Horribly wrong. And I deserve this, I know I do. But I'm scared, my name. I have nothing. I'm completely alone. I need help. I need advice. I need a place to stay, just for a night or two, until I can figure things out." His last words hung in the air, a punch to the gut. A place to stay in the home I'd built from the ashes he'd left behind. A place to stay when he had left me with absolutely nothing. He wasn't asking for forgiveness, he wasn't even expressing true remorse for my suffering. He was asking for a lifeline, a handout, because he was now standing exactly where I had stood a year ago. Utterly destitute, alone, and begging for help from the very person he had ruined. The irony was not just excruciating, it was a physical weight in the room, pressing down on us both. He was a broken mirror, reflecting back the pain and betrayal he had inflicted, but now, the reflection was his own. And in that moment, seeing him there, so utterly stripped of everything he valued, a cold, hard sense of vindication settled deep in my bones. He had finally, truly, understood what it felt like to have your entire world ripped away. And he had come to me, the architect of his suffering, to pick up the pieces. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. I stared at him, this ruined man who was once my husband, and felt a complex swirl of emotions, anger, triumph, disgust, and a disturbing, almost clinical, flicker of pity that I immediately pushed down. This wasn't pity for him, not really. It was pity for the situation, for the waste, for the human capacity for such cruel irony. But mostly, it was a terrifying confirmation that the universe, indeed, had a twisted, unparalleled sense of humor. I swallowed, the sound loud in the heavy silence. His plea for a place to stay, for my help, was a grotesque echo. It wasn't just the nerve, it was the absolute, unadulterated entitlement that still clung to him, even in his ruin. He saw me not as the woman he had destroyed, but as a resource, a familiar port in his storm. The flicker of pity I'd felt instantly extinguished, replaced by a fresh surge of fury that burned cold and sharp. "You want a place to stay?" I finally managed, my voice dangerously low, each word chipped from ice. "You want my help? You want advice?" I leaned forward, my hands flat on my knees, my gaze unwavering. "Tell me, Mark, when I was standing exactly where you are now, did you offer me a place to stay? Did you offer me advice? Did you offer me anything but a mountain of debt and the crushing weight of your betrayal?" He flinched, his eyes darting away, unable to meet mine. "No, I know. I was awful. I was a monster. I don't deserve anything from you. He trailed off, gesturing vaguely with his hands, a picture of pathetic helplessness. "No, you don't," I agreed, cutting him off. "And you won't get a roof over your head here. Not a single night. Not an hour." I stood up, putting physical distance between us. "You want to talk about what happened? Fine. But not here. And not with any expectation of me being your savior." He looked up at me, his face a roadmap of despair. "But I have nowhere to go. My phone's dead, I don't have any money for a hotel, I don't even have a car." "That sounds familiar," I said, a bitter smile playing on my lips. "It sounds exactly like the situation you left me in. Funny, isn't it? The universe really does have a sense of humor." I walked to the kitchen, needing a moment, needing a glass of water to steady myself. The entire situation felt surreal, like a morbid play unfolding right in my living room. I filled a glass and took a slow sip, turning my back to him, letting the silence hang once more. When I turned back, he was still there, slumped on my couch, looking utterly defeated. The anger was still there, a hot ember in my chest, but something else was starting to push through, a cold, calculating resolve. His story, the uncanny mirroring of my own devastation, was too significant to ignore. There was an opportunity here, a twisted, painful one, but an opportunity nonetheless. You said Jessica drained everything, I began, my voice calmer now, detached, almost clinical. Tell me everything. How? What accounts? Did she use your credit cards too? He seemed surprised by the shift in my tone, but relief flickered in his eyes. He grasped onto the chance to talk, to unload his misery. Yes. All of it. The joint checking, the savings we had, the investment accounts I'd started with the money from the house. He didn't say our house, or my money, but the implication was a knife twist. The house I'd lost, the funds I'd worked for, that he had stolen, had then become his capital for a new life with Jessica, only for her to steal it all back. The cycle was sickening. She started a few months ago, I think, just small transfers at first. I didn't notice. I was just so happy. She was so beautiful, so exciting. And we were spending a lot, traveling, new clothes, fancy dinners. I was just so caught up in it all. I didn't pay attention to the details. She handled most of the bills, said she was better with finances. Said she'd learned from her mistakes in her last relationship. He scoffed, a dry, humorless sound. Mistakes. Right. She learned how to take everything. He continued, the words tumbling out, a confession laced with self-pity. Then about a month ago, she started getting edgy. Distant. She said she needed to go visit her sick aunt. I believed her. I was so stupid. She took her passport, her essentials, but left a lot of her clothes. I just thought she was coming back. But then her phone disconnected, her social media, gone. And then the banks started calling. Overdrafts. Maxed out credit cards that had my name on them too. She'd even taken out a personal loan in my name, signed with a forged signature, right before she vanished. My blood ran cold. Forged signature. Maxed out credit cards. Disconnected phone. Social media deleted. It was a verbatim replay of my initial investigation into Mark's disappearance. Every chilling detail, every gut-wrenching realization, he was reliving it. He was describing my pain, my ruin, but with him as the victim. She even took the car, he continued, oblivious to my internal turmoil. The new luxury car we'd bought. Said it was registered under her company's name, some loophole. I just nodded along. I never checked. I never questioned. I just trusted her. He looked at me, a desperate plea in his eyes. How could I have been so blind, my name? How could I have been such a fool? I didn't answer. I just watched him, listened to the raw, unfiltered agony in his voice, and felt a strange combination of savage satisfaction and a detached sense of horror. He had asked me how he could have been so blind. I wanted to scream, because you were too busy being a thief, Mark. Because you were too busy destroying my life to consider that someone could do the same to you. But I held my tongue. This wasn't about him. This was about my future, my justice, and perhaps, a path to reclaiming what was rightfully mine. So, you have nothing, I stated, bringing him back to the present. No money, no car, no place to stay. You're homeless. He nodded, a single tear tracing a path through the grime on his cheek. Yes. I'm utterly destitute. I've been sleeping in my car, in a friend's car, for the last few nights. They're getting tired of me. I had nowhere else to go. All right, I said, my voice firm, cutting through his self-pity. Get out. His head snapped up, eyes wide with shock. What? But. I just told you. I said, get out, I repeated, pointing towards the door. I'm not giving you a single cent, and I'm certainly not giving you a bed. But, I continued, raising a hand to stop his protest, I am going to make a phone call. And if what you say is true, if Jessica did to you exactly what you did to me, then there might be a very slim chance that your misfortune could, in some convoluted way, benefit me. And only me. Do you understand? He stared at me, hope battling with confusion in his eyes. Benefit you? How? That's for my lawyer to figure out, I said, walking towards the door and opening it wide. Now leave. And don't contact me. I'll contact you, if there's something to discuss. If not, this conversation never happened, and you're on your own. He stood up slowly, looking utterly bewildered, but also, crucially, desperate. He looked at the open door, then back at me, his eyes searching for something, anything. He found nothing. Okay, he whispered, his shoulders slumping. Okay. Thank you, my name. He walked out, a broken, defeated shell of the man he once was, leaving my apartment feeling strangely empty and charged at the same time. I closed the door, locked it, and then stood there for a long moment, the silence ringing in my ears. My first thought was Laura. I needed to call her, but then I realized no, this was too big for just a friend. This was legal. This was serious. This was potentially a lifeline. I needed Mr. Davies. I paced my small apartment, a frantic energy buzzing under my skin. My mind raced, piecing together Mark's confession with my own past. It was undeniable. The modus operandi was identical. Jessica hadn't just betrayed Mark, she had learned from his textbook, refining the technique. She had seen how easy it was for him to vanish with a life savings, and she had replicated it perfectly, only this time, the victim was the perpetrator. The irony was so profound it bordered on cosmic. I picked up my phone, my hand trembling slightly, and dialed Mr. Davies' office. It was late, but I knew his direct line. He answered on the second ring, his voice a little gruff. Mr. Davies, it's my name. I know it's late, but something has happened. Something extraordinary. He paused, then sighed. Extraordinary usually means bad in my line of work, my name. But go on. I'm listening. I took a deep breath and recounted the entire saga, starting from Mark's frantic calls, his appearance at my door, and finally, his confession. I laid out the mirroring details, the identical method of betrayal, the sheer audacity of Jessica. I talked about how Mark was now utterly destitute, a mirror image of myself a year ago. There was a long silence on the other end of the line after I finished, punctuated only by my own ragged breathing. I imagined Mr. Davies, a shrewd, experienced man, sitting in his home office, processing the sheer audacity of it all. Finally, he spoke, his voice slow, measured, and utterly devoid of his usual dry sarcasm. Well, my name, he said, and I could hear the surprise, the genuine shock in his tone. That is certainly extraordinary. I don't believe I've ever encountered a case quite like it. He paused again, then a different note entered his voice, a sharper, more focused edge. But it also presents an interesting opportunity. My heart hammered in my chest. An opportunity? Indeed, he continued, and I could almost hear the gears turning in his legal mind. Mark, as loathsome as his actions were towards you, is now a victim. And more importantly, he is a victim of a crime that precisely mirrors the one he committed against you. Jessica, by all accounts, has executed a meticulously planned financial fraud. And Mark, having been the architect of such a scheme himself, and now its victim, could be an invaluable witness. Against Jessica? I clarified, trying to keep my voice steady. Exactly, he confirmed. His testimony, his bank statements, his credit card accounts, the forged loan signature, all of it provides irrefutable evidence against Jessica. He understands the mechanism of this type of fraud intimately, because he perpetrated it. He would be able to detail exactly how she operated, what accounts were targeted, how she concealed her actions. He becomes a crucial, perhaps even essential, witness for any prosecution against her. And how does that help me? I asked, cutting to the chase. The vindication was delicious, but I needed something tangible. Because, Mr. Davies explained, his voice gaining momentum, if Mark cooperates fully with law enforcement and with us, he could be instrumental in helping us locate Jessica, ascertain the full extent of her fraud, and potentially, trace the funds. If we can prove that Jessica drained accounts that contained funds that originated from your joint assets, the ones Mark stole, then there's a much stronger case to recover a portion of what you lost. Especially if Jessica is apprehended and her assets frozen. It was a long shot, I knew. But it was a shot. A glimmer of light in the darkness I'd been living in. So, he'd be helping me recover my money, by helping to put away the woman who stole his money, which was initially my money. The layers of irony were almost dizzying. Precisely, Mr. Davies said, a faint hint of amusement returning to his voice. It's a tangled web, to be sure. But the bottom line is this: Mark, as a victim, has a strong incentive to see Jessica prosecuted. His cooperation, while not absolving him of his own crimes against you, could significantly strengthen our position in recovering your assets. The police and prosecutor would likely be very interested in hearing his story. And what about Mark? I asked, pushing aside the wave of complicated emotions. Does this somehow lessen what he did to me? Absolutely not, Mr. Davies stated firmly. His actions against you remain a separate legal matter. However, his cooperation against Jessica could be viewed as a mitigating factor in any future proceedings related to your case. It wouldn't erase his debt, but it could influence sentencing or the terms of any restitution. But that's his problem. Our focus, if you choose to proceed, is on justice for Jessica's crimes, and through that, recovery for you. I took another deep breath, the decision already forming in my mind. This wasn't about forgiveness. It wasn't about reconciliation with Mark. It was about cold, hard justice, and the chance to reclaim what was mine. All right, Mr. Davies, I said, my voice steady, imbued with a newfound resolve. I want to do it. But on my terms. This is strictly a legal arrangement. There is no personal connection, no emotional involvement with Mark. He is a tool, a witness. Nothing more. He helps me get my money back, and he helps put away this woman who perpetuated an identical fraud. That is the beginning and end of it. Is that clear? Perfectly clear, my name, he replied, his tone approving. That's precisely the professional, detached approach we need. I'll make some calls first thing in the morning. We'll need to arrange for Mark to give a formal statement to the police, and then we can explore the civil avenues for asset recovery. You'll be a crucial party in all this, but you'll be protected. Good, I said, feeling a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. Thank you, Mr. Davies. I appreciate it. I hung up the phone, my mind still reeling, but now focused. The plan was in motion. I knew I couldn't harbor Mark, couldn't give him comfort, but I could leverage his catastrophic downfall for my own benefit. It was a dark and twisted path, born of betrayal and pain, but it was a path towards recovery and, finally, towards a form of justice that felt almost poetic. The next morning, I sent a terse, non-committal text to Mark, telling him to meet me at a neutral public place in the afternoon. I wasn't going to my apartment, and I certainly wasn't meeting him alone without a plan. When we met, I laid it out for him, cold and hard. My lawyer has looked into it. There's a way this could work. For me. And potentially for you, though that's secondary. Jessica committed a serious fraud against you, and by extension, against me, because she stole money that was originally mine. We can work together, but it's purely legal. You provide your full cooperation to the police, to my lawyer, to any investigation into Jessica. You give them everything you know. Every detail. Every bank statement. Every credit card. Every piece of evidence, even if it implicates you in your own wrongdoing. Do you understand? He nodded, his eyes wide, clinging to my words. Yes. Yes, I understand. Anything. And in return, I continued, my voice betraying no emotion, my lawyer will help facilitate your statement. We will work towards seeing Jessica face justice. There is no reconciliation between us. No forgiveness. No place for you in my life. This is a transactional partnership. You are a witness. That is all. Do you agree to these terms? He hesitated for only a fraction of a second, then nodded vigorously. Yes. Yes, I agree. Completely. Whatever it takes. His desperate agreement sealed the deal. I felt no triumph, no warmth, only a cold, stark recognition of the path ahead. The universe had indeed delivered a twisted sense of humor, turning my tormentor into a tool for my own redemption. And I was ready to wield it. The legal journey, as Mr. Davies so often put it, was less a sprint and more a marathon through a swamp, filled with bureaucratic quicksand and emotional landmines. After that tense meeting with Mark, where I'd laid out my terms like an ice merchant, things started moving. Slowly, agonizingly, but they moved. Mark gave his formal statement to the police within days. I wasn't there, didn't want to be, but Mr. Davies kept me informed. He said Mark was a wreck, visibly shaking, but cooperated fully. He handed over bank statements, emails, text messages, a digital archive of Jessica's lavish spending and her increasingly evasive behavior. He even admitted, with a heavy dose of self-pity, that he'd dismissed her red flags because he was so enamored, so high on the thrill of a new life that he'd ignored every warning sign of her true nature. He confessed to seeing exactly how easily she spent, how she loved luxury, and yet somehow, in his twisted mind, he never thought she'd turn that skill on him. The irony, as Mr. Davies dryly noted, was not lost on the officers taking the statement. The police investigation began in earnest. Jessica wasn't a master criminal, she was opportunistic and had copied Mark's playbook. The financial forensics team pieced together her movements with surprising speed, especially with Mark providing the initial roadmap of where they'd gone, what they'd bought, and which accounts they'd opened. It turned out Jessica had left a trail of breadcrumbs almost as wide as the one Mark had. She'd opened accounts in her name, transferred funds to shell corporations she'd set up, and had even tried to sell off some of the more portable assets, high-value jewelry and a luxury car, that Mark had bought with my money. The audacity was breathtaking. I remember the day Mr. Davies called me with the news. They've apprehended her, my name, he said, his voice clipped with professional satisfaction. She was attempting to cross the border into Mexico. Had a significant amount of cash on her, and some of the jewelry Mark reported stolen. A wave of something unreadable washed over me. It wasn't elation, not exactly. It was more like a deep, shuddering release of breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for a year and a half. Jessica. Caught. The woman who'd mirrored Mark's betrayal, who'd amplified my pain, was finally facing consequences. She was charged with multiple counts of grand larceny, wire fraud, and identity theft, not just for what she did to Mark, but for the intricate web of deceit she'd spun with the assets she'd stolen, some of which had originated from my emptied accounts. The police also linked her to a couple of other similar scams, though those cases were still developing. Jessica wasn't just a one-off opportunist, she was a predator. And Mark? Well, his legal reckoning was always part of the deal. His cooperation in Jessica's case, while instrumental, didn't erase his initial fraud against me. My lawyer made sure of that. Mark ultimately faced a civil suit from me for the full amount he'd taken, plus damages, and a criminal charge of grand larceny himself. The prosecutor, seeing his complete cooperation in Jessica's much larger and more elaborate scheme, offered him a plea deal. He pleaded guilty, agreed to a substantial restitution plan over many years, a portion of which would come from his future earnings, however meager they might be, and received a suspended sentence with a lengthy period of probation. He wouldn't serve jail time, a fact that initially grated on me, but Mr. Davies explained that the state prioritized getting Jessica, and Mark's testimony was key. Plus, the restitution order meant he would, for a very long time, be paying for his choices. And for what it was worth, his reputation was in tatters, his professional life likely over, and his personal life non-existent. He was ruined, completely and utterly, just as he'd left me. Justice, in its own slow, grinding way, was being served. The recovery of my funds was another arduous process. It wasn't a simple matter of getting a check in the mail. It involved seizing Jessica's assets, liquidating them, and then navigating the legal labyrinth of distributing those funds among her various victims. My claim, backed by Mark's confession and the clear paper trail, was strong. It took months, then over a year, after Jessica's conviction. But slowly, steadily, portions of my money started to trickle back. First, it was a smaller sum from an account Jessica had opened with my money, then a larger amount from the sale of the assets she'd bought with Mark's, and by extension, my funds. Mr. Davies was relentless, pursuing every avenue. He worked with the Asset Forfeiture Division, tracing the flow of money, disentangling the layers of fraud. It wasn't a full recovery, not every penny I'd lost, but it was substantial. Enough, Mr. Davies confirmed, for me to finally get back on my feet, to move beyond merely surviving. The moment I knew I had enough, I started looking for a place. Not a grand suburban house, not a symbol of the life I thought I wanted with Mark. This time, I wanted something for me. Something small, manageable, but entirely mine. I found a charming, smaller apartment in a vibrant part of the city I'd always loved but had never been able to afford when I was sharing expenses with Mark in the suburbs. It had a tiny balcony, big windows, and a fierce sense of independence about it. Signing the papers for that apartment felt like a ceremony, a personal triumph. I remember standing in the empty living room, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows, and a profound sense of peace washing over me. It wasn't just a new home, it was a testament to my resilience, a physical manifestation of my hard-won freedom. I bought new furniture, pieces I loved, not pieces chosen to complement someone else's taste. I filled the bookshelves with books that spoke to me, adorned the walls with art that brought me joy. This space was unequivocally mine. The whole ordeal left scars, of course. Deep ones. Trust was a concept I still struggled with, and sometimes, a sudden email notification for a bank transaction would send a jolt of anxiety through me. The casual cruelty of Mark's betrayal, followed by the mirroring ruthlessness of Jessica's, had fundamentally changed my outlook on people, on love, on security. But with those scars came an incredible strength, an unshakable independence I never knew I possessed. I'd faced financial ruin, public humiliation, and profound heartbreak, and I hadn't just survived, I had rebuilt. I'd learned to rely on myself, to trust my own judgment, to advocate fiercely for my own well-being. The justice I received was complex. There was no grand, triumphant moment in a courtroom. Jessica's conviction was a public record, her shame aired for all to see, but I wasn't there to witness it. Mark's restitution payments arrived like clockwork, a painful reminder of his betrayal, but also a steady flow of affirmation that he was being held accountable. It tasted less like sweet victory and more like a strong, bitter coffee, necessary, bracing, but not entirely pleasant. Yet, there was a profound sense of satisfaction, a dark, poetic justice in seeing Mark's fall. The universe, indeed, had a twisted sense of humor. He had systematically dismantled my life, only to have his new life, built on that very foundation of theft and deceit, systematically dismantled by the very person he chose to run off with. He had seen the playbook I used to track him, to investigate him, to piece together the evidence of his betrayal, and Jessica, a quick study, used that exact same playbook against him. It was a bizarre, karmic mirror reflecting his own actions back at him with devastating accuracy. He'd taught her how to steal, and she'd proven to be a far better student than he could have ever imagined. I often think about Mark now, not with anger or hatred, but with a detached curiosity, like observing a specimen under a microscope. He got exactly what he deserved, and more. He lost everything, his money, his reputation, his false sense of happiness, and any shred of respect he might have salvaged. He was last seen working a series of odd, low-paying jobs, a shadow of the ambitious, charming man he once was. The man I married. And Jessica? She's doing her time. Her choices caught up to her, just as Mark's had caught up to him. The echo of betrayal, so loud and clear when I discovered what she'd done to Mark, had finally been silenced by the wheels of justice. Looking back, it's hard to reconcile the naive woman who lost everything with the strong, self-reliant woman I am today. The journey was agonizing, filled with tears, rage, and despair. But it also forged something new, something resilient, something unbreakable within me. I am no longer defined by what Mark took from me, but by what I rebuilt, brick by painful brick, for myself. My life is smaller, perhaps, in some material ways, but infinitely richer in self-worth and independence. I have my own money, my own apartment, my own circle of trusted friends. I still believe in love, though I approach it with a healthy dose of caution and an unwavering commitment to protecting myself. The past is a part of me, the scars a constant reminder, but they don't define my future. That future is mine, entirely on my own terms, built on a foundation of hard-won wisdom, unwavering strength, and the quiet, fierce joy of knowing that I truly, finally, belong only to myself. And that, after everything, is the most profound victory of all.